Tell us more about Brain Trust.
So Brain Trust is a cognitive and emotional performance company. So we have, I think, three OTs on staff, a speech therapist, and our focus is on helping people identify what their functional challenges are, put them into, figure out a way that we can track the improvement that they may have in important performance, because that's really important for high-level cognitive and emotional sorts of therapy. A lot of it is fairly abstract and gestalt. And so, from my training and then from my experience, I know how important it is to have outcomes that you can point to and say, what we're doing is working. We don't just, we got all kinds of good stories, right? That'll make you feel good and that play well in front of a crowd. But when it comes down to it, the funders need to know that what you're doing is effective. And so we try and do both subjective and objective pre-post tracking of all of our clients that come through the door and identify that the subjective outcome we choose to use is confidence. And so we measure an individual's confidence in whatever their challenges are. So, talking in front of people in pitching a national sales meeting. I used to be really good at that. I got in a car accident, and now I'm scared to even try, right? So that would be low confidence. And we work with them together with the speech therapy team. And then by the end, hopefully their confidence is much, much higher. And then they go out and do it. And then we work with them to learn from the challenges they experienced, put compensations in place, some tools and techniques, and hopefully their performance improves and off they go. Our goal is not a good, it's not a good business goal, because our goal is to make ourselves, let me start over. So our therapy approach is not a good business goal, because our goal is to make ourselves obsolete for the client. Unlike traditional psychotherapy arrangement where it's professional relationships that go on for years and years and years. Ideally, for most clients, not all but most, we want to turn them into their own performance cognitive or emotional performance therapist, to allow them then to transfer the skills that we teach them moving forward in their lives, across their lives. So we become obsolete, and then maybe we'll have a base touch with them every 2 or 3 months and tweak this or that. But in general, we want people to be independent and say, thanks a lot, I can take it from here.
Mhm. I want to circle back around to something that you mentioned that's really important that I'd like you to expand on. The issue of confidence and concussion. Um, the experience we share is that that interplay is really important and yet not paid attention to very often. What are some of the things that a clinician who's wanting to move from being, a moderately good TBI therapist to being much better should focus on with those clients?
That's a good question. I think that's where you get into there's a lot of science out there, but not too much art of practicing with this population. So in order for the client to really trust you, you have to really strongly establish rapport for them to feel comfortable being vulnerable with you about their mental challenges, um, which is very hard to do for a lot of very high achieving professionals.
Take a doctoral level person or somebody who's been in their multi-$100,000 a year career coming into a clinic after a concussion and not wanting to believe that they've done anything wrong, and yet their spouse is saying, "Oh my God, this person's very different from what they were before, and I'm afraid if they go back to work, they're going to get fired."
Absolutely. The challenges with specifically, so if we talk about the very, very high performers, the top 2-3%, the folks that are out there making hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a year, and where mistakes can be the difference between mission success, mission failure. Financial forecasts being off by millions of dollars. Somebody potentially getting hurt or dying in their care. Those very, very high risk professionals, confidence is almost more important than the skills that they have. because if they don't have the confidence to enact those skills, they might have problems executing the skills. So if we look at how do we address the confidence? First, develop rapport. Second, be able to get the client in their own words with some guidance from us to establish where their performance is not where they want it to be. And then we go about targeting those issues in the client's own context with the skills and techniques and strategies and tools that we have that can be applied across all of these global areas of performance and jobs and everything. But there is some nuance involved in working with this population, just like there's nuance involved in working with other populations of folks more traditional settings and jobs or retail or construction or whatever it is. All populations have some unique aspects of working with them.
Some of the things you do then are to help the person be appropriately stressed and in your clinic do things that are challenging that they need to get comfortable with again, and they need to maybe have a what we used to call a constructive failure experience. And yet, because they trust you, they can come back the next day and give it another try and make some progress.
Yeah, the idea of constructive failure is really important. And the idea that you put a client in a situation that they're more than likely going to have to deal with in their own lives, professionally or personally. You can make a reasonable estimation that, yes, this level of difficulty or tension or stress is going to be present in their lives, and we need to see if they need to see if they can do it or not. And so in our folks, we generally, especially in this population, we'll see two different reasons why an individual doesn't believe there's a problem with their performance. And one could be lack of awareness. Maybe they haven't had the chance to actually go back and do the job they were doing before. And they anticipate they can do it, but they haven't actually done it. And they don't realize the problems they may have. And the other is denial. Now, awareness is more of a cognitive construct that you address certain ways. And denial is a psychological construct that you address in other ways. And it's very important to be able to determine the difference between those two and where the challenges may be coming from. In either case, they need to be addressed in a supportive setting that has some boundaries in regard to support for the client and the emotional impact that a failure experience may have. But you do have to take them to that place in order for them to grow. Because a lot of times when people go back to work, especially in these high-level jobs, you get one chance. And I'm going to strike that actually. I think that in all jobs, you usually get one chance to come back, especially if people know you had a head injury, because people don't understand head injuries. And if you muck it up, that's going to be it. So we have to make sure that not just for your job, but maybe for the mission or whatever it is. So we have to be sure that the person is ready to go back to the degree we can to those sorts of situations.
And you're using work simulations, I guess, to challenge people at a progressively demanding level. Is that the idea?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of neat. You have to. I'll tell you this actually. So I helped some of the folks at the local university in their OT program with a work unit in their training for their OTD students. The position that the case study, the woman in the case study was going back to, was a radiation dosimetrist, which is a very, very sophisticated, specialized area of practice. It's a master's degree in medical physics. And basically this individual is responsible for putting together all of the radiation treatment plans that then a radiologist and a oncologist sign off on. She's the one that is responsible for making sure that what the oncologist wants to be delivered can be delivered and is delivered by the, multi-million-dollar machines that are involved in that care. It's a very complicated job. Now, upon reflection and feedback from the students, we probably should have gone with a little easier of a job to introduce them to the concept of work rehab. It would have been appropriate, I think. But there also is the fact that that's a good example of work-oriented neurorehab in that you have to become an expert on that person's job in order to help them return to that job. And so this client is a real client of mine who, we're in the process of working with and trying to have a positive outcome with. And so it's if you're a curious person and you've always been interested in people's jobs and, oh, what's involved in that and this and that and the other with it, it's a really good area to feed that curiosity. I learn stuff every day. It's kind of neat.
Mm-hmm. Using the client as a resource, and what other resources did you use to develop your own fund of knowledge and expertise background about that particular occupation?
Well, the first stop is almost always ONET.
Mm-hmm.
And ONET gives us a really good scaffold of what's involved in the job in terms of preferences, educational preparation, um, job activities and tasks, skills, that sort of thing. So that gives us a scaffold. And then we talk to the client and find out, but it's a general scaffold because each job is very unique. Um, we then talk to the person to determine what aspects of that scaffold are appropriate in terms of what they actually do. And then after that, you do some other just general research online, YouTube it or what have you. The internet, I don't know how you guys did it before the internet because it sure makes our job a lot easier.
Well, it was just, yeah, we had papyrus and we had very organized
Yeah,
libraries.
lots of paper rustling.
Now, one of the things that's really, I'm not an OT, but I've been a fan of OT since I was mentored back at Rancho in, I'll tell you now, 1970. The OT job is so much more interesting, and OTs don't fully appreciate the opportunities they have to have their curiosity addressed. But it's a challenge, and you've got to be willing to be a lifelong learner to be a great OT. And that's one of the things that you and Debbie and all of the folks that we run with uh, have as a strong trait, and that we're very curious and love learning about all these different things. How many different occupational categories do you think you've learned about since you graduated?
Uh, I tell you, I have no idea.
Yeah,
Uh,
hundreds, though,
especially when
right?
you get in hundreds and hundreds
Yeah,
and hundreds.
yeah.
Um, and even within the military, that's a
Hmm.
huge thing. So
Hmm.
and I need to figure out, well, what's an artillery observer's job,
Hmm.
and what type of mathematics skills do they need to have, right, to be able to call in artillery or whatever it is,
Hmm.
right? I have no idea.
Hmm.
So, or I had no idea, so I had to figure it out.
Hmm. Yeah, some of those folks need both trig and calculus, and you don't realize that when you start working, going to work for the United States Army or the Navy. And trig and calculus, yep, it's a
Yeah,
very
yeah,
sophisticated and under combat stress. My goodness.
mhm,
So
yeah,
yeah, it's pretty impressive, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. It's pretty awesome. Pretty
Mhm.
awesome to be able to explore that many things as part of the job. And
Mhm.
once you get your feet under you in terms of the process, then you just apply that process of going about how do you figure out what a person's job is, and then how do you create or how do you cater your traditional therapy interventions you do in a clinic to that individual.
Mhm.
Um, it's pretty neat.
So, Matt, one of the things you've done over the past few years is to begun to transition into developing a forensic sub-practice. What drew you to that, and how's your experience been with that? When did you first start doing forensic work?